welcome to another episode of Jason's Game Room, the only podcast here on YouTube that talks about everything gaming, from board games to dice games to CCGs to video games. Hell, I've even talked about Pog and Dungeons and Dragons and things like that on this show. You're going to want to keep tuning in every week to see what I'm talking about, because if it has anything to do with gaming or anything from the gaming world, it's going to be on this show. Hence the title, Jason's Game Room. Anyways, moving right along into today's subject, I want to talk about an entity known as the Continuing Committee. And if you're not familiar with the Continuing Committee, they came about in 2007 as a way of keeping the Star Trek customizable card game going in terms of downloadable and printable new cards, expanding the rule set and keeping up with tournament play, as well as ban lists, watch lists, and a host of other resources for players. Now, I do like the fact that they have complete rule sets and glossaries, and you can go look up any card on their website if you're unclear. I think it's cool that they do that. But anyone that knows me will also know that I've had an issue with the Continuing Committee since almost the beginning when they started, because for some reason, the people that run the Continuing Committee are always doing things on a whim or doing things because they seem to be those type of people that have played in tournaments and lost certain cards. And if you pay attention to their website as much as I do, you'll notice that their watch list and their ban list always seems to pop up with cards that they just all of a sudden don't disagree with, because I'm guessing some of them used to lose to these cards or had bad experiences. And while the Continuing Committee does a lot of good for the game, they also act like a bunch of crybabies in the way they do things. I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. And anyone that's listened to this show since its inception knows that I don't pull any punches. I tell it like it is. And I honestly don't believe it's good for the game as a whole to have a bunch of crybabies running the show. Now, a lot of you are going to disagree with me on this, and that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinions. And if you want to add some comments as to why you think I'm wrong or what you think is good about the Continuing Committee in the comments section, then by all means. But seeing as how this is my show, I'm going to talk about what I want. And I'm going to call it straight down the middle. Now, here's some examples of what I'm talking about. If you look at the ban list, and every so often they add cards to the ban list, some of these cards do not belong on the ban list. So I'll give you a few examples. Let's go down the list here and see what one of the big ones is. Red Alert. Now, if you're not familiar with the card Red Alert, it's an event card that lets you play as many personnel, ship, and equipment cards per turn as you want. So say you play that card and you have like 5 personnel cards in your hand and another event. You can put all 5 of those personnel cards down immediately, and that's fine. It was one of the original cards for the premiere set that came out. And if anyone remembers, there are tons of cards out there that can counter that because it's an event. You can use Kevin Uxbridge, you can use cards like Q2 and other cards. And then in the alternate universe expansion, the card Yellow Alert came out, which specifically nullified the effects of Red Alert. So this card can be taken out of play almost instantaneous if your opponent's deck has those other cards in it. And yet the Continuing Committee put Red Alert on the ban list completely. You can't use it at a tournament at all. And you can get booted from the tournament instantly for having that card. Why? If it has so many counters, why is it on the ban list? I'll give you another example. Rogueborg Mercenaries. That's a cumulative card. So the more Rogueborg Mercenaries you have out, and it's an interrupt card, the more effective and the stronger they are. But again, it can be countered by other cards. And even though it is a powerful set of cards, and if your opponent or yourself has 5 or 6 of them that you can put down as cumulative, then you can do a lot of damage on your opponent's ship and beat up and kill his crew. But at the same time, there's ways around it. There's always ways around it. And then you have one of my favorites that should have come off the ban list. And if anyone remembers these 2 cards, Toxutot and Supernova. And as I've mentioned before on a previous episode, I was kicked out of a tournament when Decipher was still running the show because they forgot to tell everybody about this combination being banned, but that's another story for another day. And it's surprising that the continuing committee has kept it on the ban list because, again, there's ways around it. Supernova is an event. Toxutot is an artifact that's played as an event. Both easily nullifiable. And I don't know a lot of people that actually use those combo cards in a playable deck. And I've played a lot of Star Trek customizable card games since '94 when the game came out. I've been to tournaments. I've played with a group of friends. Trust me, I have experience in this. And not many of us ever use that combo because it took a while to bring it out in the first place. And you're more concerned with getting your ships and your personnel out than doing a death blow right off the bat that can be taken out. My advice to the continuing committee would be at this point, you have to look over your ban list again and take some of these cards off. And look at some of these other cards on here. Q's Planet, Paler Toff, Sherlock Holmes, Horgon. Come on, guys. You really don't need those cards on here. Jem'Hadar Shrouding got put on there. The shrouding is an integral part to the Jem'Hadar. And it's not something that can be overused and it can be taken out. It's very perplexing the way they do things. I want to move on to their watch list. And I have a huge problem with their watch list because a lot of it deals with Borg-related cards. And I'm going to read you something off their site here from their watch list. So here's one of the cards, and this is 7 of 9 from the Borg set. And 7 of 9 is a triple icon Borg card, and it greatly enhances your Borg deck. It does a lot of things. Now, what they have here next to it, Battle Borg decks are a looming threat with a lot of moving pieces. We will be monitoring some of the key aspects to see if we can identify an acceptable solution. A single personnel that can meet 3 staffing requirements is potentially game-breaking speed. Again, though, a lot of these Borg cards have 3 staffing requirements. It was put in the game specifically so that someone could have a kick-ass Borg deck. And as some of the other Borg cards they've put on here, 9 of 17, which I do utilize in my Borg deck, Galron of Borg, Eliminate Starship, and their reasoning is all the same. Battle Borg decks are a looming threat with a lot of moving pieces. So now they don't like people that use Borg decks that are insistent on battling, as mine is set up for. My Borg deck is not set up to score too many points. It's made to destroy. That's half the fun of using it. Mind you, I don't use it all the time, but it's very perplexing to see what they're doing to the game just because they don't agree with something. And the fact that they put on here, we will be monitoring some of the key aspects to see if we can identify an acceptable solution. Who died and put you in charge? Why can't you just let players play the game the way we want to play it? It's fun. We have a lot of fun playing this game, and you've self-imposed these rules and putting cards on your watch list, and you just know they're going to end up on the ban list because one of the crybabies behind the continuing committee more than likely lost to this and went and started bawling his eyes out in the corner. That's the root of the matter. And if you can't handle that, that's too bad. Like, this is going too far. And if you look at their rules for official tournaments, they've added so many facets to the rules that don't even need to be there. And there are a couple rules on there. I'm not going to get into all of them because I don't have that kind of time on today's show. But there were rules that Decipher streamlined as more supplements came out through various expansions to make the game a bit better. The continuing committee has gone and put these back on. And if you notice under the OTF rule list, you'll see victory conditions. And you have the standard. The game continues until one player wins the game by having at least 100 points. But they've added in brackets, except as modified below. If any player has more bonus points than non-bonus points, the excess bonus points do not count toward winning. Why? Bonus points have always counted towards winning, and not all cards with bonus points are easily attainable, and it doesn't always work. Here's another one. If at any time both players' draw decks are empty, or if both players simultaneously achieve victory conditions, the player with the most points is the winner. What? When have you ever seen a game where both players simultaneously achieve victory? I have never seen that in any of the games I've played, nor at any tournaments. I have seen it come close within 5 or 10 points, but obviously the player with the most points is the winner. That's a foregone conclusion. But draw decks empty at the same time as most points, they're adding things for scenarios that have almost a 99% chance of not happening. And then you have this one. Each player who has not completed or placed a Borg objective on at least one mission in the Alpha Quadrant must score an additional 40 points to win, unless neither player seeded any Alpha Quadrant missions. What the hell are you guys doing? That never had anything to do with the original rules of the game, especially when First Contact came out and included the Borg. It was never that extensive. In fact, it was streamlined when First Contact came out. I don't like what they're doing here. And you can see why I have so many issues with the continuing committee, because they've taken a game that, while the Star Trek card game did have issues when it first came out because some of the rules were plodding along and you had the battle sequence, which was a bit odd to start. The game mechanics were fixed in later expansions. That's part of the reason for having expansions, is having new cards come out to fix things or add to the game and fix the game mechanics. But the continuing committee has gone in a whole new direction, and they're just imposing ridiculous rules at will. And I'm not even getting into their tournament handbook, because that's a clusterfuck, and then all it does is make me angry. So you can understand through everything I've said on the show today why it gets under my skin and gets me so frustrated. The first year the continuing committee started, it seemed like a good idea. Hey, they're going to take over the game, make new cards, they're going to keep it going. But then it devolved into people somehow getting an amount of power they never should have had, and adding that to the fact that they're huge crybabies and doing what they did. I'm not saying they never did any good with the game. As I've mentioned at the beginning of the show, they have done some good. But the cons outweigh the pros in this case, and any serious gamer that plays Star Trek CCG should take note of this and make sure you educate yourself with what they're doing. Go through their site and see everything they have up there, because if it's a sanctioned continuing committee tournament you go to in the future, there might be problems. That's all for today. I don't want to drone on forever. I could, but I'm not gonna. Everybody have a great day. Remember everything I've said on today's show. I'll be back again with another podcast in the near future. And more importantly, game on.